Many know of the Bosco and Drimnagh, but not many know its long and coloured history. Here we take a trip back to the 1940s and where it all began.
My initial introduction to the whole activity was on the land presently occupied by the Children's Hospital, and it would have been just at the years the war ended, I'd say 1945-46. I remember seeing a group of lads practicing athletics on the fields just in front of what was then the club premises in a house called Prospect House. Prospect House was a 200-year-old two-storey property on a site again close to where the present Star Cinema complex is.
It was this pointed building, very dark, lights weren't around much. And then when I got into it, it was full of life, bouncing off the walls in all these rooms. But I remember just running here, there and everywhere, and playing everything that you could play. And gradually you got into the spirit and you became part of the whole thing.
Bill talked earlier about the ethos that was engendered in the club, and it was probably because would have helped that it was a disciplined club, that you couldn't act a maggot, that you came in and you behaved and you had respect for your fellow club members, juniors, seniors or whatever. Juniors had held these fellas in awe, because they were so brilliant, football, drama, all of it. And there was a lovely atmosphere in here, and respectful of all that was being done.
We all respected each other in it.
Yeah.
The man I think, or we think, was responsible for it all, because there's no doubt about it, he was.
Joe Lyman.
Was Joe Lyman. He was a housing inspector in Dublin Corporation, and he spent all his time, all his resources on the Bosco. He was one of these men who never changed, because his hair was always pretty scarce anyway, and that's kind of
He was the mainstay of the Bosco.
But he was the Bosco to begin with.
He was the Bosco, that's it, yeah.
All of the leaders in the club were members of the Legion of Mary. There was a presidium in the club. While that was an internal control, externally, I think the club would have been subject to the rules and regulations governing our membership of the Bosco Society, St. John Bosco Society, and also in Corla de la Soiga, the youth council.
It would have been pre-1950. The club activities transferred down to the site of the present club on Spurn Road.
We put on 2 plays to raise money in the Archbishop Byrne Halls in Harrington Street. We put on 2 plays for 3 nights, and eventually they got the money to start the building process here.
The entire thing was voluntary. I was in at the very beginning because of my innocence. At the time I didn't really know what I was doing, but I did drawings and things that were submitted for planning approval, and permission to proceed developed from that.
I do remember the wall along there, the canal, that wall. I remember one Saturday afternoon, along with others, digging the foundation, the trench for the foundations to go in, for that wall to go up.
It was just a bloody freezing cold, half-round thing, sitting up on concrete blocks about that high, little wall all the way around that you used to sit on, and it had a bit of a wall plate on it, and the half-round members of the Nissen hut, and it was covered in corrugated iron now, and there were 3 rooms. It really mystifies me how we got away without toilets.
Yeah.
There were no toilets in the place, and the heating was just one pot belly.
I don't remember heat. I don't remember any heat.
As a boys' club, it was sadly lacking in facilities, definitely. I do know the one thing I do remember is there was a table tennis table with 2 bats and a few balls, and I mean many is the time the balls were squashed and we had to put a hole in them and suck them out so that they became round again. Do you remember that?
Or a match underneath.
To draw the things out. Yeah, heat them and draw them. You know. But what I do remember was there was a boxing section which took over a fair amount of it, and there was a dartboard there, and I'll always remember being up there one night and somebody threw a dart. And remember Larry Miller? He lived down beside Joe.
Yeah.
Larry got the dart and looked off at that.
The best part to get the hardest, yeah.
But facility-wise, as I said, it had nothing, and yet it drew us. And I mean, it drew more than me.
Another thing my father did for us as well was when we had the old snooker, you know,
Yeah,
he went to the snooker halls in town
right.
and got cues for us. But they were nearly all broken or bent. But we had nothing at the time.
Great trick
really.
shots.
Yeah. But we didn't have it much at the time anyway. So that's the kind of things. That's how we scraped along, you know.
The variety of the activities or such, they probably were seasonal in lots of ways. The football and all that, there was always a football team
Oh,
while we were down here.
athletics.
Athletics was very strong.
We had boxing clubs, we had the best soccer team around.
Yeah, we had
I didn't play and that wasn't good enough. These fellas were. Didn't you win the intermediate league one year?
Yeah, we
didn't you?
won leagues, yeah.
Yeah.
Does anyone remember
At the Turf
through Joe's offices, the field up in Madigan Road was made available as a football pitch,
Oh yeah.
and that would
I
be
lived there. I
many
lived
years
in
ago.
Madigan. Yeah.
And the club was paid by the corporation to. It was rough ground. It was stone.
Yeah.
And the club
Yeah,
was
that's what you
paid.
need. I won there, Simon.
Now it would have been, I don't know, a few pounds by the corporation to clear the stones up on Madigan Road, and it was a matter of going down and bending down and picking up the stones and putting them in heaps and try and make it suitable for schoolboy football. And that was the initiation of football
It
in
wasn't.
that pitch.
I suppose I remember with great pleasure the advent of the table tennis activity in the club, which entered a team in sort of a Leinster Senior League. I mean, we played in, I think it was Division 3 of the Leinster Senior League, and we had some difficulty getting the facilities ready for it, and I particularly remember a table being put together by the members of the club and being painted a couple of nights before our very first match in this August Leinster League, and the table was painted the conventional green colour, but I'm afraid we didn't leave enough time between the making of the table and the first match, because according as the match progressed that night, the little table tennis ball became greener and greener and ended up pretty much unplayable, I think. But
Camouflage.
anyway, we had very sociable evenings, both at home and playing away matches to clubs, and it's one of my good memories of the club.
Well, it was a very important part of our lives there. It was very important because it was our mainstay of capital, you know what I mean?
We didn't know anything about culture, you know. I mean, and afterwards when you talk about it, we were introduced to good music, you know, and got a bit of culture out of it, even if we didn't follow it up after. Well, I couldn't sing anyway, but, you know, it was a cultural introduction, and it just came from these marvellous men who were on it, you know.
I was in a number of organisations. I was in Our Lady's Choral Society, the Palestrina Choir, the Royal Academy of Music, and the Moran Roads Church Choir, and you know, I was generally messing around with music, and so I decided that I would, to get a bit of money to go to Rome in 1950, as Joe Lynham had suggested, that I would apply to the Corlin Lasso, encouraged by Paddy Somerville. He said, throw your hat in the ring. which I did. And much to my surprise, I had an interview, and I was told I could come and teach here and they would pay me for every hour I spent. As a source of income, we brought in carol singing, and Saturdays we took over the place in the arcade, Woolworth's Arcade we called it then, in Henry Street in Dublin.
We used to stop the traffic. We were told, we were warned by the police a couple of times because people had just stopped and blocked the whole bloody place, listening to the choir. Because the choir was good as well. During
one of those sessions, a lady came up and said, "Oh, nice choir, would you like to get them on the radio?" I said, "You better ask him." Because Joe Lynham was the president of the club, and then they presented the programme to me, and she told me that it was a sponsored programme, a 15-minute programme, but they were extending it to a half an hour for the Christmas programme. And Eamon Andrew was the presenter. He would do the script and I would do the music. And so we met. Now I worked in the gas company, and Eamon Andrews was in the Theatre Royal, which was only across the road. So we met up a few times and we devised this programme, and he got this fellow Morgan Hayes, who was a singer, and well, it's all there. And so we did a radio programme.
The drama would coexist with the choir as an activity. Paddy Casey, who was part of the general drama movement, I think, in the town. The plays would have taken place in two or three places. There was a commercial production, as Jerry says, in Archbishop Bunn Hall. There was a commercial production in the schools in Crumlin, in the Christian College.
Yeah.
And there were Corla La Lasoga productions. I think I think it was Rathmines. So there would have been three. Now they wouldn't have been going on all the years, but a play had come up and you'd rehearse for a few weeks and put on the bloody play, and that was it. It didn't take over as a drama movement, but it was only one of the...
And none of us made it to Hollywood either.
but that's the nature of the plays. I wouldn't say they dominated club life,
No, I think Billy, if you reflect back on our period in it, the main emphasis, I think, was on the choir.
That's right. In all choirs, the competition is fierce, and it was then, and we always triumphed. Jerry, we always triumphed. We always won.
Yeah, we won. We brought.
We won our share.
I done it many times. I carried cooks home from to town hall.
And so we weren't that much of thicks. We didn't know a crotchet from a hatchet. What some of us do now.
I think probably the highlights were the external trips like Liverpool and
Gloucester.
Yeah. Newry was mentioned.
Yep. Remember going up to Newry.
That would be the earliest trip in my memory.
Yeah. And then there's our famous trip to Gibbstown, which is definitely a landmark in our life.
It was a thoroughly enjoyable fortnight. We spoke Irish a bit. We had probably more warnings about not speaking it than we had about praises for speaking it. I remember one night the local dance hall was just down the road, and there was a Cayley on, and your man, the head of it, I remember him saying, the Cayley finishes at 10 o'clock, boys, and you're all to be back here at 10:30. And what you do between 10 and 10:30 is your own business.
The first camping holiday the club organised was to Ballinakell in County Laois.
Yeah.
I remember the first one being particularly poorly organised, but they used to do things like play the locals in hurling. The hurling was never a great skill. A couple of us, I played it in Crumlin School.
I played it.
We used to, with respect, Billy Trimna wouldn't have been in Crumlin's.
No, it used to be for about 10 goals every time. I didn't go down to play hurling, I went down because I was singing. That's what I was brought down by a car, you see, because I was working. And I was brought down to sing and make a few bob at the club as usual. That's all the only thing I could do for them,
They were they became kind of annual things. And then I think after Ballinackill, in the early 50s, the club would have progressed to Palace Kenry in Limerick.
I do remember the first time we went, I think we went to Gloucester.
That was the second
One of
year.
the trips.
Yeah.
And being in the village or somewhere, the houses were quite near the footpath. What was the name?
Blaisdon.
Blaisdon, yeah.
And the houses were near the footpath. I remember we were all intrigued with, they had television over there at that time, black and white, you know. And we were looking at the windows, you know, as we walked down the group to see what was this. We couldn't believe it, you know.
But Jerry, you remember the football there, over there, they were brilliant, weren't they?
Right.
That match we played over in Blaisdon.
Blaisdon? Oh, Jesus,
They were
yeah.
fantastic.
We fancied ourselves.
We fancied ourselves.
We did. We fancied ourselves as a fairly useful.
But the priests were playing as well,
Oh,
weren't they?
priests.
And they were
Well,
bored.
yes.
The seminarians in Blaisdon, the Salesian fathers, what we didn't
They
know.
were brilliant football.
Yeah, but what we didn't know, Bill, was that they had beaten the bloody combined services
Yeah. There you
in
are.
England.
They were that good, yeah. They were.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus, I'm not joking. There was quite a number of them who I reckon could have made professional
Oh, very
footballers.
easily, yeah. There was
There's no doubt.
dominating
We were
centre-half,
hockey.
you know.
We came home with our tail between our
Oh,
legs. didn't we?
absolutely, yeah.
The football trips to Liverpool at Easter were
Yeah.
little ahead of their time, but they were, when you look back on them now, you travelled on that cattle boat, and we travelled on that. I remember playing cards all night. Nobody went to sleep. Half the fellas were very sick.
Sick as dogs, yeah.
Sick as dogs. But Liverpool, the trips were generally involved. Then we would go to Everton over Easter, or we'd go to Liverpool. There's usually matches on Good Friday and Saturday, Holy Saturday, and we would go to those, and we tried somehow or other, and I can't remember the actual matches, playing some local team over there just to make a weekend of it.
The one thing that I suppose I would take from my time in the Bosco was the camaraderie that was then and is now. I mean, we have met, I don't know how many years it is since we have seen one another, but it's as if we were last week or the week before. There was a great friendship developed between all of, certainly our era in the Bosco.
And also the extraordinary presence of the, as we call, brothers, their influence, which wasn't aware at the time naturally. I mean, 16, 17, 15, whatever. You don't think you're taking it in, you know. You think it's all yourself, which totally selfish, totally involved in what you think about things, you know. It's afterwards when I started thinking about what happened about that time, particularly when we started this historical discussions, that you start to think what Joe Lynam meant, what Keogh meant, what O'Rourke meant, you know, all these men, Tom Nolan meant, you know, a man who brought me to Rome one time, you know. And
A vastly different complex now. And it's a great pleasure to come back and see the progress and the breadth of activity of the present club. It's a marvellous tribute to the people of today who now run the club. I'd like to record that.
The Centre wishes to acknowledge the involvement of hundreds of people who helped to fund, build and run the Centre, who it was not possible to mention in this short film. We look forward to producing similar films about the Centre during the other decades of its existence.